The term Flemish Community, French Communauté flamande, German Flämische Gemeinschaft, has two distinct, though related, meanings. Culturally and sociologically, it refers to Flemish organizations, media, social and cultural life. Alternative expressions for this concept might be the Flemish people or the Flemish nation. The term community should then not be capitalized. Politically, it is the name of which both elements are normally capitalized. For one of the three institutional communities of Belgium, established by the Belgian constitution and having legal responsibilities only within the precise geographical boundaries of the Dutch language area and of the bilingual area of Brussels capital. Unlike in the French Community of Belgium, the competences of the Flemish community have been unified with those of the Flemish region and are exercised by one directly elected Flemish Parliament based in Brussels. History. State reforms in Belgium turned the country from a unitary state into a federal one. Cultural communities were the first type of decentralization in 1970, forming the Dutch, French and German cultural community. Later on, in 1980, these became responsible for more cultural matters and were renamed to simply Community, the Dutch community also being renamed to the Flemish Community. In the same state reform of 1980, the Flemish and Walloon region were set up. In Flanders it was decided that the institutions of the Flemish community would take up the tasks of the Flemish region, so there is only one Flemish Parliament and one Flemish government. Legal authority. Under the Belgian constitution, the Flemish community has legal responsibility for the following: education, culture, language legislation in monolingual Dutch-speaking municipalities, certain aspects of welfare, health care and child allowances, international cooperation in all areas of the competency of the community. As the Flemish community's institutions absorbed all competencies of the Flemish region, they became also competent for all regional policy areas, including agriculture, public works and regional economic development, local authorities, environment, mobility, energy. Members of the Flemish Parliament elected in the Brussels Capital Region have no right to vote on Flemish regional affairs, only on community affairs, since affairs concerning the region are governed by the Brussels Parliament. Legally speaking, in the region of Brussels Capital, the Flemish community is responsible not for individual people but for Flemish institutions such as schools, theatres, libraries and museums. The reason is that no distinct subnational status exists in Belgium, yet individuals living in Brussels can opt by their own choice for certain policies of the Flemish community. Language. Dutch is the official language of the Flemish community. Minorities speak French, Yiddish, Turkish, Arabic, Berber, Italian, Spanish, English and German. Though most of these groups are recent immigrants, since the Middle Ages, Jews have formed the oldest minority to retain its own identity. Compared with most areas in the Netherlands, the historical dialects of Flemish people still tend to be strong and particular to locality. Since the Second World War, however, the influences of radio and television, and of a generally prolonged education, as well as the higher mobility for short trips or for moving towards farther localities, have resulted in a deterioration of the traditional pure dialects, in particular amongst younger people. Some of the differences between the dialects are eroding, and mainly in localities as suburbs with a considerable influx from other areas. New intermediate dialects have appeared, with various degrees of influence by Standard Dutch. In Dutch, these are often called Tussentaal or, rather derogatorily, Verkavelingsvlaams. More recently, a number of local initiatives have been set up to save the traditional dialects and the diversity. In Brussels, the local dialect is heavily influenced by French, both in pronunciation and in vocabulary. Nowadays, most Flemings in Brussels do not speak the local dialect. This is due in part to the relatively large numbers of young Flemings coming to Brussels, after a long period of many more others moving out while French speakers moved in. In certain municipalities along the border with the Walloon and the Brussels capital regions, French speakers enjoy language facilities. These cover rights such as to receive official documentation in their own tongue. Similar facilities are enjoyed by Dutch speakers in some Walloon municipalities bordering the Flemish region, by German speakers in 2 municipalities in the French language area of the Walloon region, and by French speakers in the territory of the German-speaking community. The geographical limitations of the communities require the French community to ensure Dutch basic education in its municipalities with facilities for speakers of Dutch, and the Flemish community to finance French schools in its municipalities with facilities. Flemish institutions in Brussels, where responsibilities of the Flemish region can be devolved at the provincial level. No such equivalent exists in the Brussels capital region, which itself exercises many competencies for territorial tasks elsewhere assigned to the provinces. The community competencies there are exercised by the 2 affected institutional communities. The Flemish community therefore established a local elected council and executive to cater for intermediate-level decision-making and public services. The VGC then recognized local, municipal institutions to take care of the purely local public service in these community areas. Media. Flanders has an official radio and television broadcasting company, the Vlaams Radio en Televisie Omroep VRT in Dutch. Since 1989, several private companies for region-wide radio and television broadcasting have become established. There are also so-called regional broadcast companies, of which the range is limited to only smaller parts of the Flemish region. A written press is dominated by a number of quality dailies, several popular dailies, and a huge number of general and specialized magazines.